So, I love your take on that first, Joni. Something that really mattered to you that you're really proud of or might help other people.
Yeah. I'll go back to Girls Inc. Over the years, I spent time on committees with working with them on scholarships, and that really I mentioned fills my cup up because I'm really actually humbled by the strength of these young women. I'm humbled, and it's funny we'll all be in a room, and there'll be doctors and lawyers there, and women of you would consider just super successful. And we're all just amazed at the women standing before us, young women, and just kind of on that note, I have a lot of confidence and faith in this generation of women coming out. And, you talk about social media, occasionally I'll go on there and they're incredible. I did not have that confidence or have that emotional intelligence, speaking of that, in the 20s. I have two young men in college, and they have two amazing girlfriends, and they're incredible. Their emotional intelligence and confidence and wanting to make an impact in this world at their young age in their early 20s is where I was at when I was 40, right? Just it's been great to see that. So I guess I do think this generation of young women coming up, and maybe I'm starry-eyed about how much I love these young women. But you just even look at some, not to go to pop culture, but to look at someone like Taylor Swift, right? You're like, she's amazing. Like just that, the brilliance behind her in so many ways. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question because I went on a tangent of how much I love this generation that's coming up right now.
No, honestly, it's brilliant. Brilliant. And I'll do a sideline about a Taylor Swift thing later as well off the podcast, but I totally agree with you. And another thing it kind of springs to mind when you're talking there as well is a lot of these young people as well, they're actually spearheading companies to do more. They're asking those questions. They're driving that change, which I think is absolutely brilliant. We would really a high level of consciousness there as well. But they're also the data storytellers, aren't they? Using social media and things to raise awareness around issues and help catalyze change. So super powerful examples there. I love that. And on a personal note as well, I think some of the most satisfying things I've seen is where you see things go full life cycle. You've been a mentor, for example, and then you see that mentee become a mentor themselves. And it's such a reciprocal circle. And that is such a powerful thing. And you see that confidence rising because it's not just about kind of democratizing access to new skills and opportunities. It's helping people have that confidence to apply those skills as well. And that, bringing those two things together, I think is super, super powerful and important as well.
Absolutely. And who knows, fast forward 20, 30 years now with that generation taking over, you'll always want mentors, but maybe the need won't be there because, half the faces of leadership will be women, right? I'm counting on that generation to maybe fix a little bit of what my generation might have not done so well sometimes.
I love that. I love that. And on a side note, because I think this is a really important one too, when we talk about skills and with all the change in so many levels that's going on in the world at the moment as well, let alone within the workspace. And, with the advance of AI, it could be a whole subject on its own at the moment, but it's helping people question, what skills do I need to invest in today? What do I need to be doing for tomorrow? And it can be overwhelming. That phrase information overload has been around for years, hasn't it? And I think now it's on a whole new level. So as part of this, as kind of managing these changes and kind of keeping calm with it and making those right decisions, the ability to switch off. I think we all know it can be really difficult at times, can't it? But it's important to be able to do that and to build kind of resilience, for want of a better expression. I think resilience is, it's not just an organizational thing that we see so much about. It's very much a team and individual aspect too. So I wondered if you had any kind of thoughts about how you do that and kind of any tips, any nuggets really to share about how you kind of relax as much as we can from what's happening and different pressures that we're dealing with. Because again, that in of itself is a massive skill. And as you mentioned, not a soft skill at all. It's a really difficult one. And sometimes when we don't get enough time on within curriculums to help people with those skills, are massively important learning for life type skills.
Yeah. And so you're talking about skill sets needed to thrive and be successful.
Yeah, be resilient. Yeah.
And I think regardless of your industry, I think, certainly spending the extra time to learn about it and podcasts. So I'm constantly listening to different podcasts, reading books. I'm reading one of my favorite books right now. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to promote books, but Invisible Woman. Oh my goodness, changing my mind and my life on everything. But I'm constantly listening to podcasts, and I am listening to podcasts from people who, you know, they're further ahead in their career as I am, or just made a bigger impact, right? So I love to listen to them. I do think it's important. Again, back to this, you're honing in on a skill set, is whatever your industry is, really become an expert at the most you can, become an expert specifically in your industry, or pick a lane or a skill set that you want to learn a lot about. So telecom and tech is huge, right? So, you know, it's hard to say, I'm going to become an expert in tech. Well, I wouldn't do that, but I would say maybe become a tech expert in SD-WAN, or expert in AI, an expert in EVPN, or I'm an optical networking. Like, pick a particular subset of a solution and then become an expert in that. And that way you really understand it. I also think it's really important as you're developing skill sets to really understand the competitive landscape, or understand your customer. Yeah. So, you know, spending extra time to understand your customer, or the market that you're addressing, right? And, you know, sometimes it's a lot of reading, and it's maybe attending trade shows where they have special sessions. I love some of the sessions in trade shows. You know, sometimes people think they're boring, but I'll go sit in the back room and take notes, because you have experts sitting up on the panel. And, you know, I think it's good to take that time and effort to learn more. And I think you're never too old to learn. And you're never too old to maybe even pivot how you think about things too.
Oh, definitely. I love that. And I think when we talk about diversity, that diversity of perspective, of thinking, is massively probably not talked about enough. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I think it's so huge. And we talk about learning, but the ability to unlearn too. You know, we look back at history and how many things we learn later on with, you know, just advances in science is one example. You know, we have to go back to learn forward, don't we? So it's so important. I absolutely love that kind of holistic look. And I've written a couple of things about Rise of the Generalist, actually. And it's kind of that combination of having your specialism and having that. And again, ideally, if you've got that passion as well, you bring those two things together, you have that lane, but alongside it, you build up this kind of canvas. I'm very artsy, so I kind of imagine like a tool, you know, paint box, you know, with all the different colors in it. But I imagine you've got this little, you know, all these different areas you can dip into to help you be confident to change along the way. So you're building this kind of toolbox or this canvas that grows with you. So yeah, I love to look at it in that kind of holistic perspective. Have your specialism, but if you build all these other skills around you, however everything's evolving, you're in a much better place to be able to evolve with it and do that pivoting you were talking about, Joni, as well. I think that's absolutely spot on.
Yeah. It's not easy though. It's work, right? And you know, as you're taking care of kids at night and you got a podcast, you know, it's
absolutely,
you know, it's a lot of work.
Couldn't agree more. And I know we're running out of time, and this subject area, I mean, so many ways. It's almost like a pick and mix of different avenues we can go down here. But perhaps in the final minute or two, if we look ahead at the future of work and kind of where we think we're going to go, and kind of look at the skills piece in particular as well, about where we can kind of advise people, support them in terms of where to invest in from a skills perspective, or where to go for support or advice. Perhaps we could spend the last couple of minutes sharing some thoughts about where we think that landscape looks like, and what nuggets of advice to support that journey.
Yeah. So, you know, one thing, well, I wish I told myself and my younger self years ago is a couple things as you're going into your career and you're working and you know, depending on where you want to go with your own career, a couple things I wish I knew or would go back in time is that, one, I would tell myself I wouldn't worry so much about what people think of me, which I think women in general, that's always a cloud over us, right? I'm not going to speak up into this meeting because we were where, you know,
school.
Yeah. And I wish my younger self, I would have spoken up a little bit more, taken a little bit more chances and risks. Go for that job that you think you're 60, 70% qualified for, because men do it all the time. In fact, there's studies on that. So, you know, take those chances, be a little bit bolder, speak up, also set healthy boundaries within a company as well. Right. So, you know, if I could go back, I would change a few things or speak to myself. You know, and what's the future look like, and what is the, you know, I think it'll be interesting because I think we'll continue as far as logistics, maybe a hybrid work from home back to the office. I think that'll continue, you know, to some aspect. It'll be interesting. You mentioned AI earlier. I think to me, AI is what the internet was in 1996. So, you know, in 1996, or, you know, as that was so long, no one knew what internet was. And, you know, there was a lot of different definitions and everyone had an opinion. The internet was going to die off. The internet was going to ruin the world. Like, you know, on the spectrum, what is the internet going to do? I see that with AI, and, you know, it'll be interesting to see, you know, how does that help our roles? And, you know, I think for the most part, I think for women in particular, it could be very helpful, right? Because it could help level set a lot of what's going on out there. So I think AI will be good for the most part. But who knows? But I see that just like the internet, and people probably don't remember, but people were very fearful of the internet. What is this? What do you mean? You know, we can download a library. Like people were, you know, panicking, and they thought it would eliminate jobs. And in fact, it created a huge industry. So, you know, AI will be interesting to see how that plays a role into our future and the future workforce. So.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. You made me smile then. I had a slight tangent in my head when you were talking about, like, going back to the launch of the internet. I was thinking about that film, The Internship, when that phrase they kept saying, on the line. And it's funny how things become part of your nomenclature, don't they, in terms of communications. Honestly, I couldn't agree more. And on a positive note about use of AI as well, I've seen some amazing things about how it's being used to identify examples of implicit bias, because there's about almost 200, I think, identified human biases, for example, but also around learning and skills can be absolutely brilliant for more personalized training programs within organizations as well. I think that is an amazing kind of use of AI going forward as well. So I think that really, really excites me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just take this one anecdote from the book I'm reading right now, Invisible Woman. They were talking about when they were doing voice recognition, Apple and all these, you know, all these companies, the voice recognition was meant off of men and the frequency of men. So that's why a lot of women, whether it's talking to your map in your car or you talk to text, it actually has a harder time understanding women than men.
Makes perfect sense.
You know, yeah. This I can't recommend this book enough. It just, everything just blew my mind with reading it. But anyways, I think of AI could correct that, right? The bias of, you know, and it seems so simple, but you know, think of all the hundreds of millions of phone users throughout the world where the voice to talk to text and all the voice is based on a men's frequency, not a woman's.
Absolutely.
And yet over half the population of the world is women. I mean,
absolutely. It's a great example, Joni, honestly. And testing a seatbelt belts is another example off the top of my head as well. Only ever been done on male data. So yeah, it's really, 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 really good examples, Joni. Thank you. And I know we have to bring this to a close. So kind of my closing thoughts here were about, you know, the ability here to come together, to encourage people to embrace opportunities to go beyond your comfort zone. Frankly, I think it's right up there for me. And, you know, click to commit. You see a training opportunity, you don't necessarily have to have every single skill beforehand or have had particular job experiences beforehand. Go for that opportunity. Don't be afraid to ask for help, and go, you know, look in different places for that help too. Continuously learn and really look for things that are going to help, you know, challenge you and inspire your growth too. But I wanted to emphasize that, but also that coming together and, you know, putting people forward for opportunities too, because we spoke about how sometimes it can be hard to do that, and it can be the hardest thing to, you know, to press that, to do that application, to have that conversation, to ask for more money potentially for things as well. But the more we bring those to the fore, I think it really helps, and to have that community to come together.